How are you guys? Welcome back to Wargaming China. And as you know, this is a channel where I focus on the War of Resistance from 1931 to 1945 in China and wargaming it. So today I've had, as you know, if you've watched one of my last players videos, my next campaign, I'm doing Chiang at the moment. I'm going to need to get figures for the RoCN. But as you know, and everyone knows, there's no such thing as RoCN, Republic of Chinese Navy figures. And so you can't buy them anyway. I did use some before, figures that I already had. I'd used some figures, and I'd used Red Box French sailors. And it turned out nice enough. I used them for the majority of my Japanese naval landing forces, but I needed more figures for Jiangyin for the defenders, and I'm such a tight ass. I didn't want to spend any money because I didn't need many figures, and I'm always going through my spares box, and I found some the old Airfix World War One doughboys, the US infantry. So I whipped the heads off them and made, I can't remember the name of the hat sailors were, but made them out of green stuff. And I thought, well, that looks alright. So then, finished a company. And then I thought, well, what is the formation of the RoCN at Jiangyin? It's just not known. We do know that there were dedicated defenders, the artillery crews, but the rest of the men and the weapons they were using were stripped from the scuttled ships of the Chinese Navy. Now, if we're talking about the Chinese Navy and you come across in China the word taku, T-A-K-U, that means naval. So the Taku arsenals you might hear of Taku guns, a Taku fort. That's a naval fort. Now, the Chinese Navy. Well, let me get back to the figures first. So, I needed some LMGs. So I went through my spares box, found Lewis guns, and Lewis guns are correct. The Chinese Navy, its ships were armed with Lewis guns. I didn't quite have enough Lewis guns, so I made some myself. They turned out all right. So I made 5 companies of 8 figures each, with 1 Lewis gun in each company. Now I've built these, and the rules I'm using for Xinjiang are rapid fire. And then I did a 4-figure command unit, CO, and I used a figure from the Hat Austrians, Hat Ottomans for them, and again more Hat Austrians converted. And I gave them a sniper. I mean, I've got no evidence at all that the Chinese Navy had snipers, but I had one figure left, it's a HQ figure. I thought, well, that's glad it went into the battle. That's just fun, if historically inaccurate. So yeah, I ended up paying about 80 figures. I'm going to move on now and show you the heavy weapons and the crew served weapons. Now, these are the pom-poms, 40mm pom-poms that would have been salvaged off the ships and incorporated in defences. And I already had 2 of them serving on a ship, and I didn't glue them to the ships exactly so that I could use them in other scenarios. So if you want to make some ground forces for the RoCN, a pom-pom is a nice support weapon. Then I went through my spares box and I found a Hotchkiss quick firing 37mm. Now, I couldn't find many references to them in Chinese naval uses, but they were Hotchkiss quick firers. So you know, I took maybe a bit of a historical liberty there. But you know, it was in the spares box. They were certainly to be found in China. And then finally, I gave them 2 Vickers guns. Now the Vickers is again like the Lewis. It's not really found in army service in China, but it is found at ministerial, and the Navy did buy Vickers guns. What caliber were they in? They were probably in 7.92. The weapons of the Chinese Navy made in taco arsenals are high quality weapons, and there was a fair bit of ingenuity of design. Like they were making the MP28 and the MP18 as a copy, but the magazine was just vertically beneath the weapon. You know, horizontally beneath the weapon, just, you know, not on the side, not on the left side. So you know, a fair bit of ingenuity. Now I'm going to show you now the guns. Now, when I say that the defences at Chiang were manned by sailors from the scuttle ship and the coastal artillery crews, you got to remember that across China, Jiangyin wasn't the only block position to stop Japan's advances up China's rivers. Now, there are 3 main rivers in China, and they're all major rivers. To the north, you have the Yellow River. In the center of the country, roughly, you have the Yangtze River, and to the south, you have the Pearl River. Now, a while ago, I did a presentation understanding China's armies, and explaining that there were provincial armies and how they were aligned to the government or not aligned with the government. Well, the Chinese Navy is exactly the same as the Chinese Army. It is chock full of divisions, and each navy perhaps comes under the control of Chiang's Republic of China Navy as events play out during the Long March and the encirclement campaigns. Now I'm putting on this. So if we look at China and we look at her fleet, there are 3 major fleets in China. The RoCN fleet, Republic of Chinese Navy fleet, Chiang's fleet, the Fujian fleet, and the Guangdong fleet. Now, as we saw in my presentations, the Fujian rebellion and the 15th Encirclement campaign, the rebellion in Fujian province had led to the warlord, the governor of Fujian province, going into exile, and his forces, including his navy, serving under central government control. Now, in another episode called the HS-123 in Chinese service, I talked about Guangdong's air force and how during the Liangguang incident in 1935, the Chai Jiteng had overplayed his hand, and his air force and his navy went over and joined Chiang's navy. So by 1937, you are looking at a Chinese navy with a strength of 59 vessels, and those 59 vessels are distributed to 5 fleets. Now, in total, in 1937, the 59 vessels of the RoCN included 6 light cruisers. Now, that sounds, oh, that's impressive. But light cruisers in Chinese service are a lot smaller than light cruisers in Japanese service or English service. You know, light cruiser you'd usually be about 10 to 12,000 tons. None of the 6 Chinese light cruisers weighed more than 3,500 tons. So, and this is because even though the Yangtze rivers and the Yellow River and the Pearl River are very wide rivers, you do need shallow vessels that have a shallow draft. So this would always limit the size of the size of the ships that you could operate on these vast rivers. Now, the 59 ships of the Chinese Navy were, as I said, there were 6 light cruisers, 30 gunboats, and 20 smaller vessels including sloops, torpedo boats, tenders, and transports. And when I say tenders, I mean seaplane tenders, floatplane tenders. Now, come 1937, at Chiang, one of the first, when the Chinese Navy had decided what ships it was going to scuttle, and it chose 2 of the light cruisers it chose that were to be scuttled belonged to the Guangdong fleet. And the admiral that controlled the Guangdong fleet said, well, I'll scuttle those 2 cruisers, but you have to match them with RoCN ships. So it meant that the Chiang's Navy had to scuttle 2 of its own cruisers at Xinjiang that it didn't want to, just to make the Guangdong light cruisers be scuttled too. And this is an example of how, as I've said again, and I will say again and again when I'm talking about the Chinese Navy, it's a matter of scoundrels, rogues, and bounders, but not cowards. Now, so this is why when Chiang's had decided to defend the rivers of China, and buy new coastal guns, there was a lot of division from his advisors about, if they should be trusted, the Chinese Navy should be trusted with this money. The divisions within the Chinese Navy, as I said, were massive, and in a way, those divisions didn't ever end, because let's look at the Pearl River, for example, where there's lots of actions similar to Chiang, and it's the Guangdong Navy and what was left of the Fujian Navy, and they're fighting their own war in their own territory. So yes, they're part of the Chinese Navy, but they are defending their provinces. But let's get back to the defences that we'd find. Now, what you're looking at are 2 140mm Japanese naval guns, and these were in service with quite a few ships of the Chinese Navy, and I needed crew for them. So again, I looked at my Austrian infantry gunners, Austrian infantry support weapons, and I thought, gee, I just need to trim the peaks off the caps, and put a blob of green stuff near their heads, and there you go. I've got some more Chinese sailors. And I'll be honest, this technique is going to work for any kind of sailors, because sailors are so generic. And as you can see, the only thing I really did was I just I just painted. I just painted the I can't remember what part of that uniform that's called, but I just painted it. It was a paint job conversion. Now you'll see a few different colours among the sailors there, a few different types of blue, because that was the only way I could represent the different navies of China, of the Republic of China's Navy. In a lot of books they'll tell you that the Chinese Navy and I had previously thought was amalgamated in 1932, but no, it may be at a political level, but certainly not at a well, maybe that was what the division was in the Chinese Navy, you know, that it was rifle division, and Chiang didn't trust it at all. So the 140mm guns, yeah, they would also be found manning naval defences along China's various rivers. Now, I also want to say this too, when it comes to Chinese Navy, what I've read quite a few times is when I find what the defences are of a place, and you know, somebody might provide me a map. I recently got a map, a beautiful map of Chiang from Alexander I. Thanks, mate. And then you read stories, you see, and Chinese local commanders were very, very good at moving their guns around because they knew how many spies there were. A lot of the times they were in isolated positions, so they'd move the guns and swap them around in other positions, you know, replace lighter guns with heavier guns in the same batteries, and you know, they wouldn't even tell their commanders about it. You know, they'd just keep it under the local commander would take that decision. And it turned out many times that the Japanese had indeed such good intelligence of what the Chinese guns were and how they were manned and what their ranges were, that when various Chinese commanders did indeed shift their guns, they would always catch the Japanese with their pants down. And so it's always good to remember that. You know, that's the rogue factor of the Chinese Navy. Okay, well, I hope that was interesting. I just put them all in my defences at the back. I'm carrying on with the Jiangyin game at the moment, and it's progressing all right, but it's going to be a while before I've got the scenario the way I want it. All right, mate. Guys, all the best. See ya. Bye.